Hi.
Hi.
Usually I start these off by asking people what their name is and what they do, but I'm not sure in this case it's necessary. All right, so Dad.
Yeah.
Can you please repeat after me? Congress shall make no law.
Congress shall make no law.
Is it working?
I can memorize in 5 minutes.
Let's see if you can.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Nigga, nigga, nigga. Are there any niggas? I know the one nigga that works here.
Or of the press.
Good evening from ABC News headquarters.
Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
I'm free to think and to speak. My ancestors couldn't, I can.
Can you break a nigger? Is it okay?
Free speech, or abridging the freedom of
And all I could think of was shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
Homosexuality is shameful.
Intifada NYC.
Kiss my ass.
The whole concept of Congress shall make no laws abridging free speech is brilliant. I think it's the cornerstone of democracy. Without it, you don't have a democracy. The whole idea that you can really have a country where anybody can think anything, say anything, create anything. I think the whole idea of creating a country like that over 200 years ago it's a miracle. It is a miracle. I'm not the only interpreter and defender of this miracle. I'm just the one who happens to be your father. There are many others before and will come after me who've had their lives crushed, destroyed, they've been jailed, they've lost their jobs, people who believe that without free speech, you don't have a free society.
So this is something that is very sacred, it wasn't just handed to us. We have developed this. The founding generation gave us the structure and gave us the words that have stood the test of time. Congress shall make no law. Isn't it so simple?
Well, the First Amendment says Congress shall make no laws respecting the freedom of speech. But Congress makes lots of laws respecting the freedom of speech, so we're balancing here.
Battles over free speech go back to the very beginning of our nation. It's not that in 1791 the First Amendment was ratified and then since then everyone has enjoyed freedom of speech. That is certainly not the case. Now, wars are often a moment in our history when the government feels it necessary or desirable to limit freedom of speech.
Our country is a battlefield in the first war of the 21st century.
On September 11, 2001, there was this sort of psychological break across the country. Everywhere, this sort of security blanket that we've put over our heads disappeared.
When our nation is gripped by fear, our government often responds by attacking our fundamental liberties.
The greatest danger to civil liberties is another attack, so that civil libertarians should support effective security measures that would reduce the likelihood of an attack. Oh yeah, look, if Washington gets blown up by a nuclear bomb, forget about civil liberties, right?
Sometimes the bomb might explode without any warning. Then the first thing we would know about it would be the flash. And that means duck and cover fast, wherever you are. There's no time to look around or wait.
When did you first learn about the concept of free speech?
Well, I guess one learns about it. I guess I learned about it somewhat in college. I was in college at the time of the McCarthy hearings.
Next question, Mr. Stripling. Are you a member of the Communist Party, or have you ever been a member? Are you a member of the Communist Party? Against the Constitution. Ask the next question.
Our American way of life is under attack from without and from within our national borders.
So At that time, I saw people trying to exercise free speech just being destroyed by McCarthy. I was not that political. I remember watching Joseph Welch, who was the lawyer who stood up to McCarthy. I remember that very clearly.
Have you no sense of decency, sir? At long last, have you left no sense of decency?
I know this hurts you, Mr. Welch.
I'll say it
May I
hurts.
say, Mr. Chairman, as a point of personal privilege, I'd like to finish this.
Senator, I think it hurts you too, sir.
By the time I got to the Army, the instance in the Army where they tried to court-martial me for something that I allegedly said, I think just made me think about free speech a great deal. It's the first time that, of course, I was ever a defendant. I learned through this and other experiences that it's very lonely. You go into a courtroom as a lawyer and you have all these flowery words, and you talk about the Constitution, you talk about the Bill of Rights, you talk about all these things that are meaningful, but the person standing next to you is basically focused on being terrified they're going to spend X number of years in jail. It went a large way towards making me more political. And I also learned if people want to stop speech, they will use any number of different reasons to try and stop it. So that you'll see prosecutions now all over the place because they don't like somebody's political bias.
You are, of course, one of the most controversial figures we've had in the Senate in a long time. And you have the distinction of having coined a new word for the dictionary, namely McCarthyism. Now, how do you define McCarthyism, sir?
Mr. Huey, I didn't coin the phrase. Or putting it the way one columnist did the other day, he said, apparently McCarthyism means calling a man a communist who is later proven to be one.
Their goal is the overthrow of our government. There is no doubt as to where a real communist loyalty rests. Their allegiance is to Russia, not the United States.
There was a period from 1947 to the late 1950s of a very severe closing down of the avenues of dissent in American society.
12 top communists in this country are rounded up.
Some people were persecuted, but many others simply were silenced by the fear of losing their livelihood or maybe even being prosecuted.
My father was one of the victims of the McCarthy period. He was a high school teacher in New York City, and he was among the first group of 8 teachers to be suspended and then fired. We used to have arguments in the 80s, in the 1980s, about whether or not there would ever be a need to worry again about academic freedom. And he would say, just wait, something will happen, something will come back. And I would say, no, this is never going to happen again. And he was right. The attack on 9/11 opened the ground once again for the kinds of attacks on teachers, on the academy, that one had thought were over with after the 1950s.
But in the war on terror, I think what's interesting is the attacks on free speech have tended not to come from the government so much as from private, self-proclaimed patriotic organizations who try to monitor what's being taught at universities or monitor what people are saying. People are not being thrown in jail for what they say, but academic freedom is under attack today.
I want to call the meeting to order. This special meeting is convened to consider the recently publicized comments of Professor Ward Churchill of the Ethnic Studies Department. Let me point out that we invited...
Consider letting the students speak. Please consider letting the students speak.
If you speak up one more time...
Let the students speak.
Jerry,
do this, understand,
they have
then
spoken
you'll start
writing and taken written comments.
Okay.
To allow this to happen. Understand that. Understand that. This is McCarthyism at its finest.
On 9/11 itself, I had been asked to write an op-ed, try to make sense of this, to be posted the next day. So I had already written on 9/11 what might the motive have been. Before the buildings were down, all three major cable news channels, I was flipping back and forth between them, and they're all saying exactly the same thing, that this is a senseless act. How would they know?
Why are they jumping?
And the second thing that struck me was they were, at the time, talking about there might be in the World Trade Center itself as many as 17,000 people. They were all, on all three channels, being continuously pronounced innocent. So if you attack America, by definition, there could be no reason for it. And if you're an American, you are by definition innocent.
Evil has found us. I'm sorry to say, when President Bush said that last night, that evil has done this. That's what it is.
Once you've started with the Iraqi children and the Palestinian situation, you can run a string, as I did, all the way back to the Dutch playing kickball with the heads of the Wappinger Indians, okay, in New Amsterdam, in roughly the location of the World Trade Center. That's an unbroken chain. So I stopped talking about the actual perpetrators. I started talking about the ghosts who had experienced a similar or comparable fate over the years at the hands of the self-proclaimedly innocent Americans. Went through the Contra War in Nicaragua, back to No Gun Marie, and the 3.2 million dead in Indochina, and then 1.5 million Filipinos killed by the Indian fighters fresh off the plains. That war began in 1898, which is 8 years after Wounded Knee. So you can go back from Wounded Knee all the way back to that little game of kickball. It's an awful lot of bodies piled up there.
Ward Churchill's a very polemical writer. He is a public intellectual. He was hired by the University of Colorado Boulder. Because he was a public intellectual, he's written dozens of books. He's very prolific. And he doesn't censor himself at all. He just goes, shoo.
Chickens coming home to roost, yeah. I posed a question, which went pretty much like this, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not exact quote, but if there is a better or more efficient way to impose consequences on the little Eichmanns composing the technocratic core of American empire, I'd really like to hear it. It was in the dark hole of cybernetic oblivion and sat there for 3 years until somebody dug it back up.
Now, these are people associated with the political right. They're organized into groups. One of the big ones is the American Council of Trustees and Alumni.
ACTA decided that it needed a centerpiece for an ideological purge, and they decided that this would be perfect for their purposes.
ACTA did a report called How Many Ward Churchills, and we used him as a type, if you will. Essentially, our question was, could we put Ward Churchill in context? How many Ward Churchills are there? And we concluded he is not alone, he's quite common.
About 60,000 professors teach the kind of doctrines that Ward Churchill is teaching and don't allow students in their classes.
David Horowitz, I would suppose, consummated that with his 101 worst professors in the country.
Most dangerous, perhaps. Were they the worst?
Dangerous. I wrote about him in the introduction where I described how the Churchill affair became a public affair because it shows the mentality of other professors.
David Horowitz is trying to get state lawmakers to pass laws protecting conservative students. He also happens to be the author of Indoctrination, the left's war against academic freedom.
As an outsider to the university, all I can do is be a catalyst.
Every time somebody lists me as a danger professor, I get dozens of emails by patriots all around the